as Food, Agriculture, and Rural Studies Group, we are gathered to honor Professor Cornélia Barta Flora, who passed away a year ago on April 30, 2025, in recognition of her commitment to sociology, the training of researchers, and her active participation in the advancement of knowledge about social movements, institutions, and professional associations. She cultivated a love for science, strengthened a broad field of research on rural populations, and left an exceptional legacy to rural sociology, built over at least 55 years of work. We celebrate her remarkable academic career, as well as her commitment to rural sociology and Latin American studies. Cornélia O'Neill Flora, as many of us knew her, was a lovely person, a dear colleague, and a brilliant academic. She masterfully developed numerous research projects on peasant family farms, rural communities, women, agroecological movements, and sustainable development. In addition to collaborative work, publications, and teaching in graduate programs worldwide. The last time we met in person was in Canada during the IRSA Congress, and we participated in the subsequent agroecology knowledge exchange workshop, building a South-North partnership held in Waterloo, Ontario in August 2016. Cornélia Barta Flora's work has left an exceptional mark on the international academic community and on the relationship between academy and social movements in Latin America. A graduate of Cornell University, emeritus professor at Iowa University, researcher at Kansas University, and professor of rural development at several international research centers, Cornélia did not confine herself to strict institutional or regional boundaries in her work. She was a global professor and researcher. Her work extended from the United States, Canada, to Europe, Latin America, and Africa, and is impressive for the impact of the knowledge generated on rural development, social justice, environmental issues, and feminism. Cornélia developed a great capacity for action and academic expertise about the strengthening of movements for environmental justice and rural community studies, strongly contributing to postgraduate education wherever she went. I am referring to her work in Argentine, Patagonia, carried out with the late Professor Monica Bendini from the University of Comahue, and with researchers who produced considerable work influenced by her methodological approaches. Cornélia's outstanding ability to build relationships, support projects, and yet remain light-hearted and open to new encounters is noteworthy. Furthermore, she remained attentive to criticism and to theoretical and methodological innovations in the field of rural development. I recall her presentation to one of the rural sociological meetings back in the 90s, shortly after finishing her term as president of the Rural Sociological Society, in early stages of debates about the globalization of agriculture. He cannot lecture rural people in a global economy anticipated and raised thought-provoking questions about many observed phenomena in the world, even today. While the emphasis of studies up to that point had been on economic impacts, Cornelia presented an agenda with new themes that prioritize people and that continue to demand answers from research and public policy today. Let me end with a citation from her presidential address to the Rural Sociological Society. Rural areas have not only become more vulnerable to worldwide economic shifts, but the structures of production in rural areas worldwide are shifting as well. Rural social and economic structures are increasingly dependent on capital. As a result, concern in the international community is increasingly focused on the well-being of capital rather than the well-being of people. There is a dearth of comparable cross-national information on income distribution and no recent comparative data only on land distributions. Equity and social structure remain unmeasured and unanalyzed on both a national and international level. We need now to turn our attention to policies that favor people over capital, particularly rural peoples, in an increasingly global economy. Thank you very much. Thank you, Cornelia.
Hello. I would like to say a few words in memory of Cornelia Butler Flora, or Neil, as so many of us knew her. I first met Neil when I was still a graduate student at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. My major professor, A. Eugene Havens, or Gene Havens, had invited her to give a talk. At the time, Gene and Neil had been collaborating through a Ford Foundation-sponsored project in Colombia. I was still very much a student trying to find my footing intellectually and professionally, so I could not have imagined then how important Neil would become in my life. Soon afterward, Gene became ill with a very aggressive cancer and passed away tragically young at the age of 46 before I completed my PhD. His death was devastating to many of us. In the difficult years that followed, Neil, in a sense, took me under her wing. She became a mentor, supporter, and source of encouragement at a moment when I deeply needed one, especially one whose research also focused on Latin America. Over the years, she wrote countless letters supporting my applications for jobs, fellowships, and research grants. She did this not only for me, of course, but for many younger scholars. It was one of those things that distinguished her. She understood that academic life is not built only through ideas and publications. It is also built through generosity, solidarity, and the willingness to help create opportunities for others. I remember especially her endorsement of my 2008 book, Food for the Few. Coming from Neil, this meant a great deal to me, not only because of her stature as a scholar, but because she represented a tradition of engaged rural sociology that sought to connect intellectual work with questions of justice, inequality, and human dignity. Throughout the many years that I knew her, it became increasingly clear to me that one of the deepest sources of her commitment was her Christian faith. Neil did not wear this faith ostentatiously or dogmatically. Rather, it expressed itself through action, through service, humility, and a profound concern for rural and peasant communities, especially those facing marginalization and hardship. In academia, we often speak about engaged scholarship, but Neil truly embodied it. She believed that scholarship should not be detached from the real lives of people. Her work consistently reflected a concern with community empowerment, rural development, sustainability, and the human consequences of economic and social transformations. But Neil was also deeply committed to her scholarly community itself. She understood that academic associations are not merely bureaucratic structures. They are spaces where intellectual traditions are sustained and where younger generations are welcomed and encouraged. Her service as president of the Rural Sociological Society was only one expression of this commitment. Those of us active in the Food, Agrarian, and Rural Studies section of the Latin American Studies Association also remember how faithfully she participated in our meetings. LASA conferences were important to her not simply as professional responsibilities, but as communities of intellectual exchange and friendship. Neil rarely missed a congress, and she never failed to attend the FAR's business meetings. Her presence became an enduring point of continuity and identity within our section. And I think that continuity matters. Academic life can sometimes feel transient. People move from institution to institution, conferences come and go, intellectual fashions change. But there are certain individuals whose sustained presence help create a sense of collective memory and community. Neil was one of those people. She combined intellectual seriousness with warmth and accessibility. Senior scholars sometimes become distant or intimidating figures. Neil never did. She remained approachable and generous with students and junior colleagues alike. Many of us here probably have our own stories of recommendation letters, words of encouragement, thoughtful comments after presentations, or simply conversations in conference hallways that stayed with us long afterward. What I remember most, however, is not simply her scholarly accomplishments, impressive as they were, but her generosity of spirit. In academic life, generosity is perhaps more important than brilliance because generosity multiplies itself through others. Neil invested in people. She helped build careers, scholarly networks, and communities of support. The effects of that kind of work continue long after we're gone. So today, as we remember Neil Flora, I would like to express both gratitude and admiration. Gratitude for what she gave to so many of us personally, and admiration for the example she leaves behind as a scholar, mentor, and human being. I also want to acknowledge Jan Flora, who is with us today and who shared with Neil not only a lifetime partnership, but also a remarkable intellectual and ethical journey. Those of us who attended LASA congresses over the years became accustomed to seeing Neil and Jan together, each making their own important scholarly contributions while also supporting one another's work and commitments. Together, they embodied a shared commitment to rigorous scholarship, rural communities, and social justice. Their collaborative work, perhaps most notably their book, Rural Communities, Legacy and Change, reflected a deeply engaged vision of rural sociology, one grounded in community empowerment, sustainability, and the conviction that scholarship should contribute to the improvement of people's lives. To Jan, to their daughters, Gabriela and Natasha, grandchildren, and to all those closest to Neil, I would also like to say that her influence extended far beyond her immediate circles. She touched many lives across countries, generations, and disciplines. Her legacy lives not only in her publications and institutional contributions, but in the many people she encouraged, guided, and inspired over the course of her life. She will be greatly missed. Thank you.
I'm Jan Flora. Yo soy Jan Flora, hablando con personas que conocieron profesionalmente a Cornelia. Hay dos características o imágenes de ella que prevalecieron. Uno es que los que la habían visto en reuniones o conferencias mencionaron la imagen de Cornelia escribiendo en su computadora en la mitad de alguna conversación colectiva en que ella de vez en cuando hizo un comentario o sugerencia que mostraba que ella captaba perfectamente lo esencial de la conversación que la rodeaba. Yo, siendo un varón que puede atacar a un solo tema con visión túnel hasta resolverlo. Después podía o puedo dar la vuelta para pensar en otra cuestión. Su deseo, mejor dicho, su placer, este es el segundo punto, en ayudar a colegas, sus estudiantes, ex estudiantes y estudiantes en otras carreras o en otras universidades, era extraordinario. Esta ayuda se manifestaba en leer sus artículos, tesis, borradores de libros, casi siempre con una rápida devolución, sin duda, debido a su multitasking, darles consejos y ayudarles en implementar una solución del problema que enfrentaba o para los que lo faltaban confianza en sí mismo, indicarles por qué su objetivo o su obra tenía mérito y cómo se podría mejorarlo aún más. Después del fallecimiento de ella, varias personas compartieron conmigo una historia de cómo Cornelio les había ayudado o les tomaba bajo su ala. El caso de Gerardo no es único. En muchos de los casos yo no había oído previamente de Cornelia las historias que estas personas me comentaron. Ella lo hizo por el amor al prójimo sin tener que anunciarlo a nadie. Ahora yo quiero agregar algunos comentarios míos muy personales. Primero, Cornelia y yo hemos podido superar, y no siempre sin lucha y a veces con el sufrimiento de nuestras hijas, el mito de que los esposos no pueden mezclar sus vidas profesionales y personales. Para nosotros hubiera sido imposible separarlos, Creo que el activismo político fue el cemento que permitió tan mezcla. Muy pocas veces hemos diferido políticamente. La excepción que puedo recordar fue cuando Cornelia quería tomar una clase para desarrollar una capacidad de distinguir entre vino y vino fino y vino regular. Yo puse a tomar vino porque la cerveza fue y sigue siendo la bebida preferida de la clase trabajadora. Poco a poco yo aprendí a tomar vino fino. En cuestiones que son verdaderamente centrales a la orientación política, cada uno ha respetado las decisiones de la otra y viceversa. Por ejemplo, durante la guerra en Vietnam, cuando fuimos estudiantes en Cornell, yo tomé la decisión de ser un conscientious objector, es decir, un opositor a la participación en la guerra, y fui un líder en organizar un grupo de 250 hombres jóvenes en el nordeste de los Estados Unidos para quemar las tarjetas que indicaron que éramos elegibles a ser reclutados a las Fuerzas Armadas de los Estados Unidos en el Parque Central de Nueva York. La destrucción de la tarjeta llevaba una pena de encarcelamiento de hasta 5 años. Estuvimos planeando hacer nuestro trabajo de campo para las disertaciones en Chile, cuando una corte especial decidió determinar si había bastante evidencia para acusarme de haber destruido mi tarjeta. Cornelia decidió cambiar el trabajo de campo a Colombia porque sería más fácil visitarme en la cárcel en los Estados Unidos desde Colombia que de Chile. Afortunadamente no recibí una sentencia y podía ir a Colombia con Cornelia. El otro ejemplo que quiero mencionar es cuando estuvimos trabajando con la Fundación Ford, radicados en Bogotá, con responsabilidad como oficiales de desarrollo rural para la Fundación en todos los países de habla española de América del Sur. Hubo solamente un puesto que partimos igualmente. Cuando fuimos profesores en la Universidad del Estado de Kansas, habíamos organizado un capítulo local de Amnistía Internacional en que escribíamos cartas a oficiales en países que encarcelaron prisioneros de conciencia. Cuando informamos a Amnistía Internacional que Argentina fue parte de nuestro territorio, ellos pidieron que lleváramos un dinero a las madres de la plaza porque todavía no podían conseguir una cuenta bancaria. Esto fue durante la dictadura de los generales de la derecha en que 30,000 argentinos fueron desaparecidos. Cornelia ya tenía una visita programada para Argentina para hablar con diferentes grupos feministas sobre la posibilidad de recibir dinero de la fundación para promover sus actividades. Entonces, ella decidió que llevaría el dinero a las madres. Yo estuve nervioso y insistí en que ella indicara a alguien entre los grupos de mujeres cuando ella iba a entregar el dinero para poder notificar a mí si ella no volvió. Al fin y al cabo, ella entregó el dinero a las madres, y ellas la invitaron a una fiesta en la casa de una de ellas. Fue una experiencia hito de participar en un pedazo de la vida personal de mujeres tan dedicadas a los derechos humanos, pero también capaces de gozar de su misión comunitaria a pesar de haber perdido a sus hijos. El FARS fue el grupo preferido de Cornelia en Lhasa. Noté que que hay una nueva generación de líderes y que el interés en Lhasa rural está más fuerte que nunca. Hace unos 3 años hubo un homenaje a la vida de Mónica Vendine hecho por Lhasa Rural. Cornelia publicó varios artículos con Mónica y nuestras familias pasamos varias vacaciones juntas. Cornelia estaría muy grata recibir el mismo honor que recibió Mónica de Lhasa Rural. Muchísimas gracias.